Okay, so we'll start the first talk today,
Okay.
which is from Andy Clark, and it's Trusted Invisibility.
Okay, cool. So this is Bridget Helm, the famous machine man from Metropolis, and basically what I'm going to do, just in a few minutes here, is kind of try and put on the table why it looked like it would be a good fit, extended knowledge and extended mind. Actually, raise a couple of questions about why the fit may not be quite as cozy as it at first appears. And I think one of the things that we've done in the project is begun to unravel some of the ways in which coziness might eventually be restored. I'm actually not going to talk about the restoration of coziness. I'm just going to set the two up and leave it slightly unstable. Okay, so I'm going to start by just giving you a little bit of a feel for this background claim that human minds can be extended minds. And then I'm going to use some examples to set up a puzzle, which is really, the puzzle is really whether, if you like, the conditions on knowing and the conditions on being a part of you, when we actually turn to external technologies, pull us in opposite directions. Okay, so the extended mind claim, as Duncan said, is just this kind of idea that when we ordinarily think about the mind, we might be, woohoo, over-impressed by no input. Don't we like it when that happens? Well, I can see it. It's not my computer. My computer's showing it perfectly happily. I suspect it's that little thing there. Yeah. Do you want to try my dongle instead? Yeah. Currently, okay, let's see. Not seamlessly merged with this piece of technology. Right, okay. Cross your fingers. So the extended mind claim is that sometimes when we think about the mind, we might be over-impressed by, if you like, the kind of ancient boundaries, skin, skull, the sort of the human skin bag, as we sometimes like to say. But just as our physical capacities can sometimes be repaired, augmented, extended by, exoskeletons, artificial hip joints, etc., so the thought was, can our mental capacities? Now, in one way, this is just totally obvious. We use iPads, we use notebooks, we use all this kind of stuff. But just as in the case of if you like, a tractor or a crane versus an exoskeleton or an artificial hip joint, in some cases you have the sense that the new technology is actually becoming part of you in use, and in other cases you have the sense that it doesn't. So in some cases it looks like, in a way, you're becoming a kind of extended agent. Call these the extended versus the merely tool-like cases. So all the classic cyborgs, I guess, fall, naturally, on the extended side of this divide. I don't want to get drawn into a debate about whether Terminator's an android or a cyborg. Let's just go with cyborg for now. Let's just assume he was a cyborg. In the case of Terminator, there's all this stuff on the inside. Terminator is very, very enhanced. It doesn't seem like Terminator's using extra bits of equipment. This is just what it is to be Terminator. On the other hand, when you use a good old-fashioned VCR many years ago, actually even some of them today aren't all that great, but that's pretty clearly doesn't become part of you in use. That stays on the wrong side of this divide. It's merely tool-like. It's not incorporated. So work on the extended mind has tried to argue that the difference here doesn't require that the mind extending stuff be, if you like, implanted or permanently wired to you. The idea is just that, if you like, what counts is a certain sort of dovetailing, a sort of elegant getting on together between what BioU does and what this external equipment does. So the extended mind claims that if some additional non-biological resource is generally available when it's needed, fluently and pretty much automatically deployed when it's needed, and mostly unreflectively trusted in what it delivers, then it already shares this sort of bedrock profile of your own native mental capacities. So, you can probably see where some of the trouble is going to come from. It's this notion of mostly unreflectively trusted. That's what I'm going to lead up to. This is where we're going to be pulled in slightly different directions, I think, by the requirements on knowing and the requirements on extending. So in the original extended mind paper, Clark and Chalmers argued that entries in a trusty, constantly carried notebook could actually fulfill these conditions. They could count as being fluidly incorporated into the agent that counts as you. There'd be the sorts of things we'd appeal to explain robust patterns in your behavior, just like I might appeal to your long-standing beliefs to explain robust patterns in your behavior. And a robust software package, the contents of a smartphone address book, these could all count, according to our original set of conditions, in use as being more like a part of you or a part of your mind. And there's been a lot of discussion also about web-based information sources. Harry Halpin, who you'll hear from later, has done quite a bit of that. And you can see where they're going to raise further questions. So availability, fluency, and trust were the sorts of extras that we were requiring for stuff to count as incorporated, to give it something like that native mental facility faculty profile. So, this seems like a reasonable condition. You don't normally stop and think, yeah, that kind of information, it's the sort of thing that might be stored in my biomemory. And then, okay, I'm going to try and access biomemory. That's not kind of how it normally goes. Instead, biomemory just wells up when you need it, delivers stuff, and you rely on it pretty much automatically and without worrying about it. Not absolutely always. This is just the general pattern. So truly mind-extending cyborg technology, Clark and Chalmers argued, needs to be invoked and relied on just as easily, automatically, and unreflectively as you invoke and rely upon biomemory, bioreasoning, and biosensing. So you can compare this in a good sort of Heideggerian kind of fashion to something like a tennis racket, or I think Heidegger had a hammer or something. In use, the tennis racket gets folded right into the flow of sensing and acting. So in a way, when a good tennis player encounters the world of a tennis game, the tennis racket is playing a role a bit more like a body part than an encountered tool. You're not sort of trying to get to grips with that tool. It's just part of the equipment through which you encounter the tennis world, if you like. So this has an interesting consequence, I think. It means in normal operation, the best of our mind-extending tools and technologies are always trying to bypass what you could think of as the epistemic gatekeepers. They're trying to bypass the gatekeepers of deliberate, conscious, slow, careful, agentive attention. As I put it now, the best new you bits want to join the cognitive party without being stopped at the sensory gates and asked for their credentials and ID. This poses a puzzle, and it's one that our project started to explore. So I'll say a bit about the puzzle. I won't say anything about the range of solutions. I think they will bubble up during the day, or we can talk about them. So the puzzle concerns all that stuff about trust and the need for epistemic vigilance. Is it okay to get into the cognitive party without being stopped at the door and asked for your credentials? So a couple of examples to get this on the table. This is an old example from the MIT Borg Lab, the aptly named Borg Lab. These are memory glasses that were designed to be aids for recall for people who either have a kind of mild Alzheimer's, impaired memory, various kinds, or perhaps visual form agnosia. It was also tried on people who, despite having perfectly good vision, are unable to identify the objects that they see in front of them. So they can't, if you like, they couldn't sort of look at this and say, okay, that's a cup. Okay. So this was a memory glasses project, wearable computing for just-in-time memory support. There was a fair bit of kit involved in this, but it's got smaller over the years. What the system does is it matches the camera image, as you would guess, to stored templates, and then it cues the subject. So, it's you might be wearing this, and you might have stuff in there about, I don't know, who various people are, and as you encounter those people, it's got pictures of them, and it sort of gives you a quick cue that says, this is Granny, this is your Uncle Fred, this is a cup if it's helping you with visual form agnosia, etc. But interestingly, in these cases, the cue could be overt, so it could be put on the wearable and consciously perceived by the subject, But more interestingly, it could be covert. It could be rapidly flashed, so it's being subliminally presented. So in the covert case, it turns out that functionality is still improved, but there's no conscious awareness of the prompt or the cue on the part of the subject. So people like this a lot better. It enables them to interact much more fluently and naturally with others. They don't have to stop and concentrate on the display. They don't even know that they're being cued. They don't know when they're being cued and when they're not being cued some of the time. So there's a lot of less disfluency in the evolving interaction. Of course, the fact that we like this so much better, maybe it betrays, in a way, our sort of Cartesian past. We like it better because we don't like to be reminded that our bio stuff isn't doing all the work. So maybe we should get over it. But at the moment, we like this better. So moving on from that, it's easy to imagine cases that enhance knowledge rather than merely restore it. So this is an imaginary but not difficult case. There's a technology recognizer that makes a 3D face map from a photo. That's real. It was bought recently for quite a lot of money. It can match the face map then to other photos that it finds online. So it can, by creating a 3D face map, you can match to any picture of that person taken from any angle, under any lighting conditions, etc. So what that means is that, equipped with the 3D face map, this system can go online, discover personal information about whoever's in view. It controls social media sites, etc. So now imagine a version where if the person in view meets some desired condition, you know, maybe they're a Rangers fan or they're a Celtic fan, then you get a sub-threshold, unconscious, vibrotactile buzz somewhere on your body. So, you know, you could be wearing one of these belts that lets you have a little buzz that either goes from, let's say, from left to right if they're a Rangers fan, right to left for Celtic, but you push this below the level of conscious awareness. Still, it's going to work like the memory glasses. Normally, Rangers and Celtic fans don't get on quite as well as that picture suggests. So it could be important to know the difference when you're in a social interaction in Glasgow. So soon, just knowing who's a registered fan of either team just becomes a taken-for-granted part of how you experience any new social interaction. You just get used to being the kind of creature that just knows who's most probably a Rangers or Celtic fan. I want to claim, Clark and Chalmers would have claimed, that this kind of consciously running sub-threshold background app will just be something that becomes part of you. It just helps make you the kind of agent you are. You wouldn't use these apps any more than you use your hippocampus or your biomemory or your biosensing. They would just come to partially constitute you. Now, of course, you might say, look, I can survive without it, but that's true of vision as well. You can survive without vision. Doesn't mean that right now, up and running visual systems don't form part of you. So we want to say, look, the agent that is you is now the larger enhanced agent. That's the extended mind claim. Now for the trouble. Consider that an awful lot, most all of these new capacities will depend on the operation of stuff that you don't understand. In itself, that might not be the most worrying thing. You know, maybe when we drive a car, we rely on the automatic braking system. Some of us might not understand how automatic braking systems work. Doesn't matter. You rely on them anyway. They help you stop. On the other hand, some of the most promising new tools and technologies rely on stuff that nobody fully understands. Not only that, actually, in other cases, they don't want you to understand how it's working, but that's something we won't really go into. So here's an example. I'm just using this for dramatic effect. There's a lot of examples I could have used that are less dramatic. So this is a recent discovery that trained up artificial neural networks like deep learning nets, the kind that just help people win at Go, helped a machine win at Go for the first time. Some of you will have seen that. Pretty impressive piece of AI from the DeepMind group. So these trained up deep artificial neural networks systematically admit of so-called adversarial exemplars. So imagine a deep learning net that has learned to classify images as cars or not cars. In a recent paper with a nice little title of Intriguing Properties of Neural Networks, a bunch of folks showed how to reliably and systematically generate modestly deformed versions of images that the net would have got absolutely right and with high confidence. But these modestly deformed versions, you can't even tell the difference between this picture and the modestly deformed version. They look to you like identical images, but the same deep learning network gets them totally wrong and gets them wrong with extreme confidence. So here are some examples. So there's a kind of stick insects thing in the middle, a dog thing here. This is the adversarial exemplar, stick insect dog, some kind of gas system at the top. You can't see the difference. There's a very small pixel level difference, which is magnified 10 times up the center strip. This is it for cars. This is the original. This is the adversarial. That's the difference magnified 10 times. So most humans can't see any difference between these images, but one of them the network gets totally right with high confidence. The other one the network gets totally wrong with high confidence. And these aren't outlying cases. These have been found for very, very many different versions of the deep learning kinds of systems, lots of different algorithms. It seems to be a sort of generic property of a certain kind of network that these adversarial exemplars can be systematically generated. Now, of course, you can then go on and train the network using the adversarial exemplars, and it can end up doing better. So, technology here helps us get over that. So here's another example, maybe even more worrying. Again, adversarial exemplars. The even columns here are the adversarial exemplars for a linear softmax classifier, which is trying to classify handwritten digits. So, you can imagine sensitive cases where you want to classify handwritten digits, and you don't really want to be relying on a system that can't tell the difference, or rather that thinks that the first column is clearly a 4 and the second column is absolutely clearly not a 4. High confidence, not a 4. So just examining these networks in their day-to-day settings would have led us to conclude that they know what cars, dogs, stick insects, handwritten digits look like in general. These were really good, very, very highly successful networks. I don't think anyone would have predicted that to a human being, visually indistinguishable version of one of the images that the network easily gets right would be totally got wrong with high confidence. Why worry? We can see the difference after all. But hey, look, imagine something like the Celtic Rangers app. That just takes the net classification, feeds it to you, gets it past your epistemic gatekeepers by sending it in subliminally. You've just come to rely on it. You don't get to examine the original data. You just get, if you like, the result. So you never get to see the original image. This dramatizes what we think is an important puzzle, and one that lots of our sub-projects have been looking at. The puzzle is something like this. When is it okay to trust the capacities that constitute some particular new extended you? This is a question that you really want to give the epistemologists, really. So, philosophy of mind gets you just about this far, and then the epistemologists got to sort it out. So, for biosensing, even if you didn't know how it worked, you at least have some good background reasons for trust. So, maybe until a few years ago, we didn't know how a lot of biosensing worked. We've got a better idea now. But at least we had the long history of evolutionary tests for vision, hearing, etc. We also had a lot of user experience, slow childhood acclimatization. We also had hundreds of years of careful scientific probing and research, revealing, our proneness to certain cognitive illusions, Muller-Lyer illusions, this kind of thing. You can think of maybe the adversarial exemplars are like visual illusions for the deep learning nets. They're kind of in that ballpark somehow. What have you got for the new you stuff? For the repeatedly reconfigured new you, you've got a year or two of development, a few beta testers maybe, and the quasi-evolutionary credentials are being made by Google, Microsoft, Apple, pick your favorite. So the question really is, how should we think about that? The best personal upgrades will be those that are readily poised for fluent, fast assimilation, readily poised to get past the epistemic gatekeepers without much interrogation, if any. These are upgrades that have been designed, I think, in ways that want to preclude reflective attention and interrogation on the part of the newly enhanced agent. So we're left, I think, with a kind of dilemma, and that's as far as I wanted to get us to. The best cyborg extended mind tech doesn't seem to me to be the kind of tech that is going to lend itself to proper epistemic care and vigilance on the part of the agent. It's designed to become part of her. It's not designed to be something for her to encounter or worry about. Potentially, the better the new tech looks for extending the mind, the worse it starts to look for epistemically responsible knowing. I don't think this is where this debate ends, otherwise the Extended Knowledge Project would have had a very firm and very negative conclusion. And it would have been a really weird conclusion too. You know, extended cognition, yes, extended knowledge, no. That would actually make you worry about the extended cognition claim in the first place, probably. So, you know, I don't think this is a stopping point. But today, I just want to get this on the table. So here's a question, I think. How should we be epistemically responsible cyborgs? That's the end. Thank you.